What is up, and welcome to Amazing Dinosaurs. Today I'm going to show you this entire collection of herbivore dinosaurs and laying them from biggest over here to smallest over here. Plus I've got 5 new dinosaur figures that we're going to check out in a bit too. Now starting with one of the largest herbivore figures that I have is this new Jurassic World Dominion Brachiosaurus figure. Now Mattel did have an older Brachiosaurus figure, but this is the Jurassic World Dominion one, so it has some new painting on top of its head as well as on its back. So let's put this huge herbivore as the tallest in this collection. The next up in size is a dinosaur that looks pretty similar to the Brachiosaurus. And this figure is also from Jurassic World Dominion. This is an Apatosaurus. Compared to the Brachiosaurus, you can see that it's a little bit smaller and its neck is a lot shorter than the Brachiosaurus, but it is still the next in size. All right, what's next? Let's see what we got here. Let's go with the Stegosaurus. This is the green, tan, and brown version. And it has this attack button to swing its tail and back torso back and forth. This figure is a lot smaller, but it is next in size compared to the Apatosaurus. Right over here is the Triceratops herbivore figure. This dinosaur has 3 big horns on its head and a huge frill, much larger compared to a Triceratops, I think. And it has 2 action buttons, one for swinging the head up and down, and one for spinning the torso back and forth. And let's put it right there next to the Stegosaurus. Next, we're gonna go with this long-necked dinosaur. It kind of looks like an Apatosaurus. Well, I'm not sure. It might actually be a Brachiosaurus. What do you think? But either way, it is next in size. So let's put it next to the Triceratops. Up next is this Parasaurolophus from the Hammond collection. It's got the light tan body with the orange and purple and white striping along its back, and like all Hammond collection figures, is very posable. Now let's set it next in line. I've got another Parasaurolophus over here in this collection. This is actually a Jurassic Park Parasaurolophus. Standing them side by side, you can see the similarities. Both of them have that purple striping, but the Hammond collection has the orange on its back, and this one is a lot lighter colored. And it looks like this Parasaurolophus actually stands a bit taller, so let's go ahead and switch places. Let's go ahead and grab these Triceratops now. This is a dark brown version with the blue spotting on the top of its body. And this Triceratops has a feature that when you move its tail, it moves its head around with sound effects. All right, let's put that in next in size. Here's this next Triceratops figure, but this one is in a camo green color with the brown detailing on the top and on its frill too. Now on this figure, the tail does not control the head, but you can press down on the body for some sound effects and a striking action. Let's put that down right next to the other Triceratops. Here's a similar dinosaur. This is a Spinosaurus. It's got a green body similar to the previous Triceratops, but it does not have any huge horns coming out of its head other than these little ones right here, and then these ones on the top. And this figure has a single action button for the roaring and striking attack. Now it's time for one of my new figures. It's this one in this box that I bought off of eBay. It is a custom colored Spinosaurus. Now check that out. That has some pretty different coloring. Let's place them side by side so we can see the difference here. This one's got some bright purple, where the other has some orange on it. Also, its entire body is now a brown color with some tan all over. And it has these black patches on its back compared to the tan striping on the original. That is pretty cool. Which coloring do you like more? Let me know in the comments, the original or the custom painted. Now let's grab this dinosaur with spikes all over it. This, I believe, is a Kentrosaurus. It looks pretty similar to a Stegosaurus because it's got all these spines running along its back, but it also has these huge spikes coming out of its shoulders, and it's got a ton more spikes in the back here. Plus, there is a slide lever action for swinging those huge spikes back and forth. And you know what? I think this one is actually a little bit bigger than the rest of these, so let's move it up in line. Next up, I've got a Triceratops looking dinosaur, but I don't think this is actually a Triceratops. You can see it's got the 3 horns in the front, but it also has all these horns in the back. It might be a Styracosaurus or something like that, but let me know in the comments if you know what type this is. All right, time for another new figure. This is the Dino Tracker's Nigersaurus. And here it is out of the box. This is another herbivore that has a very long neck and stands on 4 legs. It looks like it has 2 different tones of green, the bright green here, and then the dark green along the back half of its body. It's got pretty typical texturing and detailing. You can see some little horns there, and then the scaly skin texture over most of its body. And it looks like actually in its mouth it's not painted, which is kind of a disappointment. But on its back it still has this swivel action button for different sound effects and movements. That's pretty cool. It's definitely a unique looking dinosaur. So now let's put it next in line. Next up, looks like we've got another Parasaurolophus, but this one's quite a bit different looking. It has a tan and black body, but the coolest part is it's got this white all over its face and then the bright red horn on the top of its head. And it's got a single action button on its back to move its head. So let's set that down next in size. Here's another super old figure. This, I believe, is called a Chasmosaurus. This is actually from Jurassic Park. So it looks pretty similar to a Triceratops, but it has 3 small horns on its head and a much larger frill. And this figure has an attack button when you move its leg. And there we go. Next, let's go with another brand new figure. This is the Dino Tracker's Gigant Spinosaurus figure. Here it is unboxed. It is a pretty bright dinosaur. It's got the bright orange on the front and the tan in the back. It kind of looks like a sauropelta with these huge spikes coming out of its shoulders. And it's got pretty typical texturing as well. You can see all those bumps along its skin, but there's not too much going on with the coloring. It basically looks like there are just 3 main colors: the green in the back, the white for its horns and spines, and then the orange in the front. But this figure does have an attack that when you move its head back and forth, it actually swings its tail back and forth a little bit. All right, let's set this down next in size. Next, we're gonna go with this Ankylosaurus figure right here. This one is in the brown with tan stripes and the red bottom. It features an attack button when you press down on its body. It moves its tail, and it has posable legs and a head too. So let's set this down next in size. And I think this actually might be a little larger than this one. So we're going to have them switch places. Next up, we're going with another vintage figure. This is the Jurassic Park baby Triceratops figure. It's got the camo green body with some darker coloring along the top, and when you move the leg, it has a striking action. Next, we're gonna go with this figure. This, I believe, is the Styracosaurus. It's got a ton of horns along its frill, and it's got a very natural green and brown coloring with some brighter coloring in the front. And it has an attack that when you move its tail, it swings its head up and down. All right, let's put that next in line. Here is a smaller Brachiosaurus figure, smaller than the huge one that we saw at the beginning. It's got the mostly brown body with these orange spots all over. Looks like it has some darker detailing along the top of its back, and it actually looks like it's standing a little bit taller than some of these other figures, so we're gonna push it up to the front over here. Next, we're actually gonna go with another Brachiosaurus figure, but this is a new figure from the Dino Tracker series. So let's open it up. So this baby Brachiosaurus looks pretty similar to older figures of baby Brachiosauruses that I have, but it just has totally new coloring. This one is in the all brown coloring with some tan detailing along its back and a little bit of tan detailing right along its face. And it features a posable jaw, neck, and legs. Next, we're gonna go with this herbivore that stands on 2 legs. This is a Gallimimus figure, and it comes in the tan with dark brown coloring along the top. So we're gonna set this figure here next in line, and we actually have another Gallimimus figure right here in this collection. This one has slightly darker coloring. It's almost orange, and it has a darker brown striping along the top. But other than that, they look pretty identical. And next, let's go ahead and open up this other Dino Tracker's new figure. This is the Strike Attack Zuniceratops. This dinosaur figure has some pretty naturalistic coloring with the brown and the tan, and then the darker brown along its neck. So it looks very realistic. And it looks like its legs and its arms are posable, and there's an action button on its back to swing its head up and down. Next, let's go with this herbivore. This is another one that stands on 2 legs. This one is a Dracorex dinosaur, and it has some brighter green coloring with some gray striping along its back and tons of spikes on the top of its head. Then we'll go with this cute looking dinosaur figure right here. This looks like a baby Stygimoloch figure. It has the clay red coloring, some dark brown eyes, a ton of horns on the top of its head, and of course the hard helmet shell on the top of its head for headbutting. And let's put that right next to the Dracorex. Next up is the Dilophosaurus dinosaur in the dark blue with the yellow detailing along its body. Oh, you know what? I forgot that there was another Triceratops figure in here. This one is in the bright green with the darker detailing along the top and on its head. And let's go ahead and put these Triceratops next to each other. So we gotta move this over here and put this one right in there. Next up is a four-legged herbivore. I believe this one is called a Shringosaurus. It looks pretty similar to a Stegosaurus, but it has these huge spikes along its back, and its spines look a little bit different than a Stegosaurus. And it has these little horns coming out of its front legs. And since we're almost out of room on this line, we're gonna start a new line in the front right up here. Here is another similar looking dinosaur. I can't remember the name of this one, but it has much darker coloring and these huge horns coming right out of its back. And let's get that in line right there. Next up, I've got a little mini dinosaur. It has these horns all over its body as protective covering, and it is one of the smallest figures I have in this collection. So let's set it next in line. And finally, let's end with this Sauropelta figure. It has those bunch of horns coming out of its side, and then the hard protective shell all along the top. And there it is, the smallest in the entire collection. Let's get started with the largest quadrupedal that I have, which is this huge Dreadnoughtus figure. This dinosaur has the blue with the tan striping, and it has one of the longest necks out of any of my figures. So let's set this figure on the very left because this is my largest dinosaur. Next up in size is one of these Brachiosaurus figures. Let's first choose this one right here. It's got the classic brown coloring, and you can move its legs, its neck, and you can even open and close its mouth. Let's move this Brachiosaurus right next to the Dreadnoughtus. Check out that size difference between these two. Next up, we've got another Brachiosaurus figure, but this one is newer. This one is part of the Jurassic World Dominion collection. Now, its body shape is pretty much the same as this one right here, but you'll notice that it has some different coloring, and the best part of all is that it has this reflective blue coloring along its face. Next up in size, we've got this huge Apatosaurus figure. This dinosaur is quite a bit smaller than the Brachiosaurus figures, but it's still quite large. It has the green with the light green striping, and I'm sure you recognize this dinosaur from the Jurassic World Dominion movie. Let's keep going. I think the next biggest in size is this Amargosaurus figure. I think this figure's pretty old and that they don't make it anymore, but it's really cool because it has these two huge spines running down its neck and two action buttons, one to move the neck up and down and one to swing the tail back and forth. All right, let's set this down right next to the Apatosaurus. Wow, look at that size difference. Next up in size, let's go with the Jurassic World Dominion Ankylosaurus figure. This figure features the clay red and brown coloring. It's got tons of spikes all over its body, and it has the tail that controls the head and the chomping action too. Let's set the Ankylosaurus down next in line. Oh, those are pretty close in size. Next up, let's go with the Pentaceratops figure. This dinosaur has one of the largest frills that I've seen out of any dinosaur. Plus, it's got horns all along its frill and on its face too. And it has two action buttons, one to move the head up and down, and one to move the torso side to side. All right, let's set this down next to the Ankylosaurus. Next up in size, I think we gotta go with the Stegosaurus figures here. This first one has brown, it's got green, it's got the clay red coloring, and like all the other Stegosaurus figures, it has a tail swinging attack button. Let's set down this first Stegosaurus next to the Pentaceratops. And I think all these Stegosauruses are going to be pretty similar in size, so let's just go with this one next. It's got the blue-gray coloring with the darker coloring along the top, and the pink underbelly, and of course the swinging tail attack. Let's get this Stegosaurus down next in line. This next one is brighter in color. It's almost a teal green color, It's still got a lighter underbelly, and it has some cool highlights right along its spine. This one will be our third Stegosaurus in line. And our fourth and final Stegosaurus of this collection is this gigantic Trackers Stegosaurus. And this is actually a very new figure. It's got some really cool coloring all over its body, plus it comes with this crazy looking Dino Tracker backpack. Let's set it down as our fourth Stegosaurus. Next in size, I think, is this Dilophosaurus figure. Check out these super huge horns on the top of its head and on the front of its face too. It's got a fiery red color over most of its body and the light tan underbelly, plus there's an action button to swing its head back and forth. Let's put this down next in size. Up next, let's go with this Spinosaurus in the light gray blue with the tan detailing. And check out those super dark black eyes. That's pretty crazy looking. Let's put this one down next in line, and you can use the tail to move the head too. I've got another Spinosaurus figure right here that is probably the exact same in size, but it's got different coloring. This one is the green with the tan detailing, and this one has some bright yellow eyes. So let's set this one down too, and look at that. This one also controls the head by moving the tail. It looks like we've got a few Triceratops figures up next. This first one has the dark brown with the two tones of blue along its back, and just like these Spinosaurus figures, you can use the tail to control the head. Let's go ahead and grab this next Triceratops figure with the gray and darker gray detailing along the top. But with this figure, instead of the tail that controls the head, there are two action buttons on its back. One controls the head for roaring, and the other controls its tail for swinging back and forth. Now let's set this down next in line as the second Triceratops. And this next Triceratops has some green coloring with brown along its frill and along its back too. And this Triceratops has an even different action. When you press down on its body, it does a roar, and it has sound effects too. Oh, you know what? I think there's another Triceratops here that I didn't even notice. This one has the clay red coloring with the brown detailing along the top and on the frill. And this one has one single action button on its back for the roaring action. This next quadrupedal dinosaur is a Kentrosaurus. It's got the spines running all along its back and these ginormous spikes coming right out of its sides. And this one has a pretty cool action that when you slide this back, it swings its torso back and forth to stab with those huge spikes. Now this dinosaur might be a little taller with its spines compared to the Triceratops, but we're gonna place it right here anyways. For the next up in size, we're gonna go with this dinosaur. This is the Edmontosaurus. Its front legs are smaller compared to its back legs. It's got some pretty cool coloring on its face and on that crown on the top of its head. And like many of these other cool figures that we've seen, you can use the tail to control the head. And it has sound effects too. Next, we're gonna go with this Iguanodon figure from Jurassic World Dominion. It's mostly tan, it's got some brown striping with the lighter streaks on the top. And with this figure, when you press down on its back, it has a chomping action. All right, next, let's go with this crazy looking dinosaur. This is a Sarcosuchus. It's got a long and narrow snout with tons of teeth. And the coolest part is that you can use the tail to control the head. The next dinosaur that we're gonna choose is this Ankylosaurus figure right here. This one is clay red, it's got some brown, and its spikes are a lighter color. And I think this one was from Jurassic World Dominion because when you press down on its back, it swings its tail back and forth. Let's go ahead and grab this next Ankylosaurus for our next in size. This one is a really old figure from Jurassic World. I think this one is from the first movie. And check out the size difference between the two. Next up, we've got two baby Brachiosaurus figures right here. And they each have their own unique color. This first one's gray, it's got some dark brown purple coloring along the top. And this other one is a much brighter color. It's a bright green with dark green right along the top. So let's set these down right next to the Ankylosauruses. Next in size, let's see, I think it might be this dinosaur, which I believe is called a Styracosaurus. It's got some super bright coloring along the front of its frill, which is really interesting, and it has some darker detailing along its back. Now let's set this down right next to the baby Brachiosauruses. I think next we're gonna go with this Miragaia figure from Jurassic World Dominion. Like the Kentrosaurus, this one also has some huge spikes sticking right out of its sides. Now let's set it down right next to the Styracosaurus. Next, why don't we go with this dinosaur? This is the Chialingosaurus. It looks somewhat similar to a Stegosaurus because it's got those spines in the top, but the spikes in the very back are quite a bit different, and it has these tiny little spikes coming out of its front legs. And let's set this one down next in line. Next, let's go with this crazy looking dinosaur. This is the Shringosaurus, and it's got a huge and very long neck. It's got those two evil looking horns on the top of its head too. Very wild looking. Let's put this next in line. For the next in size, why don't we go with this one? This is a Dilophosaurus. It's got a dark blue body with some orange detailing. It's got some light blue stripes along its tail and on its mouth as well. And it looks like we're running out of space at the edge of the table, so we're gonna start a new line right in front. For our next in size, let's go with this baby Triceratops figure with extreme battle damage right on the side. And let's put this one down right next to the Dilophosaurus. This next dinosaur, I believe, is called a Zuniceratops. It's got a pretty bright body, and it's got two horns on the front of its head. So let's set this down right next to the baby Triceratops. They look pretty similar. For our next one, why don't we go with this baby Stegosaurus figure? And you may notice that this baby Stegosaurus came as part of a set with this huge Stegosaurus right here. You can see that they're very similar in color. So let's set this down next in size, next to the Zuniceratops. And next we'll go with these two Dimetrodon figures. This first one is the older figure of the two, and this figure has an action that when you move its tail, it chomps its jaw open and closed. So we're gonna put that right there. And this other Dimetrodon figure is from Jurassic World Dominion, so it's pretty new. And it's got a much brighter spine, although it does not have any action buttons. So we're gonna set it down right next to the other one. Next up, it looks like we've got a Sauropelta figure. This is a pretty small figure, but it has some huge spikes on its back in comparison. It's really cool. So let's set this one down next in line. Here we have a small dinosaur. This is a Mosasaurus. It's got blue with some black detailing along the top and the yellow underbelly. And we'll set this down right here. And finally, we have two Minmi figures. This first one right over here is mostly green in color. Its spikes are more of a yellow color, but it has a ton of spikes along its back for protection. And this second Minmi figure right here is red in color, and its spikes are a bright white in contrast. But other than that, it is pretty identical to the other Minmi figure. This is the Isla Sorna capture pack. Let's go ahead and open it up. All right, here is our Jurassic World Jeep and the Parasaurolophus. With this Jeep, there's actually a button you can press that shoots out the seat. And then you can see that there's a missile that it shoots too, just like this. That's super cool. This is a super awesome dino hunting playset. Really cool. All right, up next, we've got a Jurassic World Legacy Collection Velociraptor. Let's get this out of the box. All right, so here is the brand new Velociraptor. I don't think I actually have a Velociraptor with this type of coloring. Plus, this Velociraptor has a slashing action with its torso. Look at that spinning motion. That is so cool. It's spring-loaded, so it bounces back and forth. That is really awesome. All right, up next, we've got the Pachycephalosaurus. I love the coloring on this one. It's got that dark blue with the gray. Let's get this out of the box. This is a super cool herbivore. You definitely don't want to get headbutted by this dinosaur. Check out this action move. Spring-loaded head. That is so awesome. And right back here, we've got the Cosmoceratops. That is so interesting. Look at all the horns all over this one's body. Let's get it out of the box. Wow, I love the way this dinosaur looks. It looks like it's wearing a crown almost. And look at the horns on the side too. And this dinosaur has an action as well. Check that out. When you wiggle the tail, the head goes up and down. How cool is that? All right, I know you've been looking at this one. This is a giant velociraptor. Look how big this figure is. It's probably, I don't know, maybe 3 feet from tail to head. And it's actually pretty heavy too. This dinosaur has a stomach compartment right here. So you can actually feed this dinosaur littler dinosaurs or whatever you want, and it'll go down the throat all the way into the stomach where you can open it up and get those toys out again. That is so awesome. And look at the size of these claws too. Right in the back here, we've got the great Tyrannosaurus Rex. Look at the size of this dinosaur. Look at the size of its body. That is a huge neck and face. And of course, there's the action button for roaring. That is so cool. There's so many teeth in its mouth. And of course, you can wiggle the tail and it'll move its head back and forth. Up next, with a super long neck, we've got the awesome Brachiosaurus. Look at that interesting bump on its head right there. That is so cool. This figure doesn't have any movable parts, but it is super realistic with its coloring and its texture. That is so cool. And one of the next huge dinosaurs in this haul, the great Indominus Rex with battle damage. Look at all those teeth and the awesome battle damage on the side that you can turn on and turn off. There we go. Right up here, we've got a Stegosaurus with a gray-blue coloring. Look at that tail swiping action. That is so cool. And you can adjust the head too. Here's one of my favorite dinosaurs, the Carnotaurus. That is super awesome. It's got a little battle damage on its head. And with the tail, you can move the head. Here's what I think is one of the scariest predators in Jurassic World. This is the Scorpius Rex. It's got loads of teeth in its mouth, super sharp claws, and look at this poisonous tail. Those quills on its tail are poisonous, so you better watch out for those. Here is a super bright dinosaur. This is a predator. It is the Suchomimus. Look at that long mouth with all those teeth. Kind of like an alligator, really. And look at that fin all along its back right there. Right over here is an herbivore. This is the Ankylosaurus. And look at all that armor plating. Here is a scary looking predator. Look at that red all along its neck. This is the Carcharodontosaurus. This is a super cool looking dinosaur. See all those spikes along its back? That is super awesome. Right over here, this predator looks kind of like an alligator too. This is the Sarcophagus with all those teeth in its mouth and this red scaling all along its back and then the green bottom. All right, we've got a bunch more predators and herbivores in here. These two are both Carcharodontosauruses, and look at the difference in coloring too. I think this one's my favorite because I love this orange right along the top of its body. But these are both super cool dinosaurs. Right over here, we've got another herbivore, and look at the horns on this. It kind of reminds me of the horns of a bull, kind of. This is a Nasutoceratops, and it's got an action button in the back. You can whip its tail back and forth. That is super awesome. And it's got a button on the top for swinging its horns around too. Watch out for those horns. All right, let's keep digging. Ooh, this is an interesting looking herbivore. This is a Dilophosaurus. I love the coloring on this. Got the yellow on the top and the dark blue on the sides. You can move the head up and down and the tail and all the legs too. Uh-oh, better watch out. Here's another predator. It's the Baryonyx. This is super cool. Check out that chomping action. Here is another herbivore. This is a very uniquely colored dinosaur. This is a Zuniceratops, and it kind of reminds me of a Triceratops, you know? See those two horns in the front right there? That is super cool. We've got some smaller herbivores in here. Let's check these out. Wow, these are all so different from each other. This is a Chialingosaurus. Look at those spikes on its shoulder too. How interesting is that? This little one right here is a Protoceratops. It looks very small, and it might be a young Protoceratops, but it is super cool. This orange dinosaur is a Gallimimus. Look at that long neck and the long tail. I bet these dinosaurs ran really fast. And this little dinosaur is a Triceratops. See, got the three horns on its head right there. But wait, we've got some more predators in here. Look out, it's the Endoraptor, one of the sneakiest and smartest dinosaurs out there. Let's check out these. This is a baby Brachiosaurus. You can open and close its mouth and move its neck up and down. And this is another giant Stegosaurus. It's got that tail swinging action. Those spikes are super big. Wow, that is so neat. Here comes another predator. This is the Spinosaurus. Look at that huge spine along its back, and then all those teeth right up front. All right, we've got a few more dinosaurs in here. This huge dinosaur figure is a Pentaceratops. And check out these action buttons. Those are some massive horns on its head. Right back here, we've got another Parasaurolophus. And this is an older one. This is actually from Jurassic Park. And it's got a running action too. How cool is that? Super cool. We've got just a few dinosaurs left. This dinosaur is called a Sinoceratops. And look at the size of that one horn on its head in the very front. That is humongous. All right, here's another predator. This is a bright red and green Velociraptor with jumping action. Check that out. Here he goes, ready, and go. All right, these are our final three dinosaurs of the Predator versus Herbivore collection. This is a Styracosaurus, and look at all those horns. That is super cool. This interesting looking one is a Shringosaurus. Look at those huge horns right on the top of its head and the super long neck. How interesting is that? And our final dinosaur of the bin is the mighty Kentrosaurus with those huge spikes on its side. And if you pull this lever right here, it swings its spikes back and forth. This is a vintage Jurassic Park Dilophosaurus statue. It's got a huge frill and it's even got some plants at the base of it too. This is really cool, super old, and I'm gonna put this right here on this top shelf. Let's go ahead and dig into the rest of my Dilophosaurus figures. This first one is the basic red Dilophosaurus. You can actually open and close the frills, and it's got a huge yellow crown on the top of its head. So let's put this Dilophosaurus right over here on the Dilophosaurus shelf. Next up, I've got another basic but giant Dilophosaurus figure. This one is the teal green blue coloring with the bright red frills in the front and the bright red crown on the very top. Let's go ahead and put this next to my other giant basic Dilophosaurus figure. It's looking good already. Let's see what other Dilophosaurus figures I have in here. This one is another vintage figure. This is a Dilophosaurus without the frills, which I think is pretty interesting. So let's go ahead and set this one down on the shelf as well. Right over here, we've got a miniature Dilophosaurus figure with bright yellow and red frills, and it's got the green body as well. That's really cool. It's pretty small, but you can still open and close the frills too. And let's set this down right next to the other one. Next up is a gray Dilophosaurus with red and white on its frills. And this Dilophosaurus actually has an action that when you pull up on the tail, it'll open its mouth and open its frills too. Let's go ahead and set down this Dilophosaurus too. Next up is a bright purple Dilophosaurus with red, yellow, orange all over its frills and some red on its body as well. This figure is a little bit bigger, but it doesn't have any action buttons to activate the jaws or the frills. Let's see if we can fit this Dilophosaurus right in between the two large ones. Perfect. Right over here, we've got a green, orange, and yellow Dilophosaurus, and this one actually has the lever action that'll open its mouth and its frills. Look how fast that is too, that's really cool. Let's set this Dilophosaurus down right on the end here. Two more Dilophosauruses to go. Here is a dark green and black one, and it's got super bright red on its frills. And this figure is actually one of the new Jurassic World Dominion Dilophosauruses. So this is probably one of my most recent Dilophosaurus figures. And our last Dilophosaurus is another mini green Dilophosaurus, but this one has brown on its back, and it's got red and yellow on its frills too. This is looking great so far. All right, let's move on to the Stegosauruses. But first, let's actually open up this brand new Jurassic World set. This is the Dr. Sarah Harding and Stegosaurus pack. And the box is even designed to look like a truck, which is really cool. All right, so this set comes with 3 figures. It's first got the giant Stegosaurus figure with some pretty unique coloring. I don't have one with this coloring yet. It's also got a baby Stegosaurus right there, and of course, Dr. Sarah Harding on the side. Let's check out the giant Stegosaurus first. So it looks about the same as many of the other Stegosaurus figures, but it has this clay red coloring on the top, and then the green on the sides, and then a brown underbelly, which is really cool. And like many of the Stegosaurus figures, it has an action that when you press down here, it swings its tail back and forth. Next up is the baby Stegosaurus figure. It has similar coloring as the adult. It's got the green on the sides and the brown underbelly and the red on top, but is a whole lot smaller. And look at that, even the spikes on its tail are a lot smaller too. It's pretty cute. And here is Dr. Sarah Harding. She's even got a camera wrapped around her neck as well. It's pretty cool, taking photos of the Stegosauruses.
Bingo!
Let's put Dr. Harding and the baby Stegosaurus right next to the Dilophosaurus figures. This is where our Stegosaurus domain will start. And let's put the adult Stegosaurus right next to them. Look how big this Stegosaurus is in comparison to this baby Stegosaurus. All right, let's get the rest of these Stegosauruses up here. This first one is a vintage Jurassic Park Stegosaurus with a huge battle damage on its shoulder. And it's even got some similar coloring as to the Stegosauruses that I just opened up as well. So why don't we put this one right next to that one. Moving right along, we've got a light blue and green Stegosaurus figure. It's got some pretty good detailing on its side. It's got the darker green on the top. And this figure also has the action that swings its tail back and forth. Well, it looks like we're out of room on this shelf, so why don't we move down to this other shelf that I cleared out to make space. Right here, we've got a dark gray blue Stegosaurus with a light pink underbelly. It's totally different coloring, but this figure also has that same action that when you press down on its back, it swings its tail back and forth. 2 more Stegosauruses to go. Here is a green, brown, and tan Stegosaurus, and this one has a slightly different action. It still swings with its tail, but it actually swings its entire back torso, so it's different from the other Stegosaurus figures. So it's a pretty cool feature. Let's set this down right next to these other Stegosauruses. And here is the final Stegosaurus. It's got a light underbelly with brown on the sides and tan and green on the top. That is different from all the other ones that I have up here still. So let's set this one down right here at the end of the line. All right, that's all my Stegosauruses. Now, it's time for the final dinosaur, the Baryonyx figures. Let's start with this one right up front here. This is a battle damage Baryonyx with the brown and dark gray blue coloring on the top. Let's set this Baryonyx down right next to the Stegosauruses, and the rest of this shelf will be for only the Baryonyxes. Let's see what we've got next. Here is another battle damage Baryonyx. This one is actually the same as this one, so we're gonna put it in the back right here. Next up, we've got a bright green and brown Baryonyx, and of course it's got a button on its back to activate the jaw. Let's put this down right here on our Baryonyx shelf. Here is another Baryonyx figure, but this one has lighter green coloring, and it has only one shade of brown on its head. Plus, this figure has a slide lever action to activate the jaw and sound effects. Let's put this figure down right next to our other green Baryonyx. We've got another dark green Baryonyx figure here. This one is, I think, the same as the first green Baryonyx. So we're just gonna put this down in the back here. Next up, we've got a gray, dark blue, and light blue Baryonyx with the slide lever action on its back. So you can get a ton of different sound effects. This is the first gray Baryonyx figure on the shelf, so we're gonna put it right up front here. Here is the Hammond Collection Baryonyx. So this one has a bit more detailing and a whole lot more points of articulation on its body. This one is super posable. I really like this one, so why don't we put this on the front of the shelf as well. And this is our final large Baryonyx of the bin. This one has some super bright blue reflective paint on the top of its head, which I think is a really cool detail. And let's set this big Baryonyx down in the back here. And our last 2 Baryonyxes of the bin are these vintage Jurassic Park Baryonyx figures. These ones are totally different from the new Baryonyx figures that Mattel is releasing now. Look how different in size they are, but I'm gonna place this one right up front here. And let's grab our other vintage Jurassic Park Baryonyx and place it down right in front next to the other old Jurassic Park Baryonyx. And that is it. My new shelf displays are complete. I've got the Dilophosauruses, Stegosauruses, and finally the Baryonyxes. Start start with the biggest figures over here. I think the largest one is this Jurassic World Dominion Brachiosaurus figure. This Dominion version has an updated paint design on its back and on its neck, and the reflective blue on its head. And since it's the biggest, we're gonna place this on the furthest left and go for the next biggest, which I think is this giant Dreadnoughtus figure. Now this figure is seriously ridiculously long. It's probably maybe even 4 feet long from the tip of its head all the way to the tail, and has a pretty cool blue and orange paint design too. So let's grab this and put this next in line as the next largest dinosaur right here. And we're gonna grab the next giant figure, which is a Jurassic World Apatosaurus figure. Now this figure is still pretty long compared to a lot of these smaller figures, but compared to the Dreadnoughtus figure right next to it, see how much longer its neck is? It is definitely a whole lot smaller. Now that we've got the 3 biggest set up, let's go for the next biggest one, which I think is this Brachiosaurus figure right here. This figure is a whole lot smaller than these giant ones right here, but it's still a pretty good size. It's probably a foot tall. It has some really cool coloring and texturing too. So let's set this next in line as the next largest quadrupedal dinosaur and move on to the next one, which I think is this dinosaur right here. This is an Amargosaurus dinosaur from Jurassic World. It's pretty unique because it has these 2 giant frills going down all the way from its neck to its tail. And it has 2 action buttons. One swings its neck up and down, and the second swings its tail back and forth. We've got a lot of long-necked quadrupedal dinosaurs in here so far. The next in size, I think, might be this one, and this is a brand new one that I bought. This is the Jurassic Park 30th anniversary Cretaceous figure. And here it is out of the box, and it is quite a sizable figure. This, of course, is from the Hammond collection. I don't know that I have another Cretaceous figure in my collection, so this is pretty neat. It's got some yellow, gray, black, and it's got a real big crown on the top of its head. And of course, it is very adjustable, as many of the Hammond collection figures are. So let's get this next in line. The next quadrupedal dinosaur for this collection is this gray and blue Stegosaurus figure. This is a classic figure made by Mattel for Jurassic World, and it's got a single hidden action button on its back to swing the tail back and forth. And we'll set it down next in line. For the next one, we're gonna go with another Stegosaurus figure. This Jurassic World figure looks pretty identical in shape and size to this gray-blue Stegosaurus, but of course it has totally different coloring, and it has a totally different action button as well. You can press on these 2 spines right here, and it'll swing its entire torso back and forth. That's pretty cool, and I do think I like it better than the action button on this one. Next up, I've got a vintage figure from Jurassic Park. This is the Triceratops figure, numbered JP08. And like many of the figures from the Jurassic Park era, it has the real feel skin, so instead of a hard plastic, like many of the new Jurassic World figures, it has a soft, rubbery skin over almost its entire body. And when you press down on the stomach, it actually has an action where it lifts up its head too. Now let's set it down next in size. I think it's just a little bit shorter than the Stegosaurus figures. For the next quadrupedal dinosaur, we're gonna go with the Dilophosaurus figure from the Dino Trackers collection. This cool dinosaur has a fiery red color over its whole body with some tan underneath. And the coolest part are these 4 gigantic horns on the front of its head. And there's an action button for the sound effects and attack button. Now let's set it down next in line, next to the Jurassic Park Triceratops figure. Look at that size difference. Looks like there's some Triceratops figures in this collection, and these are probably one of the most popular quadrupedal dinosaurs. This Triceratops figure comes in the gray coloring with a little bit of dark detailing along the top, and has 2 action buttons, one for the head and one for the tail. And let's put that right next to the Dilophosaurus. This next Triceratops figure is actually one that I custom painted myself. It also has a mostly gray color with a bit of gray detailing along the top of its body, but one of my favorite parts are the red coloring along its frill and its bright green eyes too. And overall, I'm really happy with the job that I did on painting this dinosaur. And here's one more Triceratops figure for this quadrupedal collection. This one is a dark green color. It has some brown detailing along the top and an attack feature that when you press down on its back, it lifts up its head. Let's keep on going with these four-legged dinosaurs. This next one is another new figure from the Dino Trackers series. This is the Nigersaurus, and it has mostly green coloring over its whole body and an action button on its back to swing the neck back and forth. I think I actually got to bump this up in line because it's a little bit taller than many of these Triceratops figures. So we're going to put it right here. Next up is another vintage figure. This is the Jurassic Park Amargospinus figure, which I believe is actually a hybrid dinosaur. This figure has some of the brightest coloring that I've seen, and it has a pretty cool feature. When you move the leg on this figure, it actually lifts up the spikes on its back, the spikes on its neck, and it opens its mouth too. And although the head of the Amargospinus is a bit taller than the Triceratops, its body is a little bit shorter, so we're going to put it next in line. Next up is another vintage figure from Jurassic Park. This one, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was called the Chasmosaurus or something like that. It looks quite a bit like a Triceratops. It has the huge frill in the front and some horns on its head too. And like the Amargospinus we saw, if you move the leg on this figure, it lifts its head up for a similar attack action. And check it out, the sound effects still work on this super old figure. Now let's set that up next in line here. For the next figure, I think we'll go with this smaller Parasaurolophus figure. This figure is from Jurassic World Dominion, so it's a newer figure, and it has some bright blue and orange accenting on the top of its body. So let's set that down right here. And now I think it's time to open this huge Jurassic Park 93 Classic Track and Explore vehicle set. Alright, now let's check out this new set. We'll first check out the car. You can open and close the doors. It has this protector for the windshield right here that you can bring down so nothing breaks the glass when you're hunting dinosaurs. It also has a turret coming out of the back of the truck, and I don't think I've seen this color design before. It's got the soft blue coloring with the yellow on the bottom, but it still has the Jurassic Park logo right on the side. And it also comes with this little lasso for hunting dinosaurs, and here is the dinosaur that comes in the set. This is the, I think it's pronounced Scutosaurus or Scutosaurus. It's a bright orange dinosaur. It looks pretty bulky. It has a huge torso. Its two front legs are white, and the two back are orange like the rest of its body. And it looks like it doesn't have any action buttons, but you can adjust the neck and the head, and you can move the legs around too. So let's get all of this next in line. For the next biggest, we're gonna go with this figure from the Dino Trackers series. This is the Gigant Spinosaurus. This figure has some similar orange coloring to the figure that we just saw, and its back is a tan color, but the coolest part are these huge spikes that it's got coming out of its shoulders, and then all the spines running down to its tail. Now let's put that next in line and grab our next dinosaur. Now let's grab this big old Sarcosuchus figure. Now this is another special figure to me because I custom painted this one as well. So originally I think it came in a purple and gray coloring, but I changed it to this camo green with the brown on top and some brighter green along the bottom too. And I think it looks pretty awesome. Next, I'm gonna grab this Ankylosaurus figure right here in the blue and yellow coloring. This is a pretty large Ankylosaurus figure, and I really love the spikes that come off the sides. Plus, there is an action button on its back for swinging its tail. Now I think next I'm gonna grab this other Ankylosaurus figure. This one is actually from the first Jurassic World movie, so this one is made by Hasbro as opposed to Mattel for many of these other figures. But it has an attack that when you move its leg, it swings its tail, and it can move its head back and forth too. Now I'll set that right there, and let's grab our next one, which I think could be this one right here. I believe this dinosaur is called the Styracosaurus, and this one has some pretty cool coloring right on its frill, bright yellow and orange. It's got a ton of spikes all over, and all in all, it's a pretty cool figure. Pretty similar to that one is this Dino Tracker's Zuniceratops figure. It too has a large frill in the front, and it's got some horns, although not anywhere near as many, but it does have an action button on its back to lift up its head for stabbing and attacking. So let's put that next in size. Next up is another new figure. This is the Jurassic World Dominion Stegosaurus figure. Now let's go ahead and open it up and check it out. Now this, I believe, is the juvenile version. I do have the adult version if you've checked out my other videos. And this little figure has some little horns coming out of its head and dark coloring around its body overall. And we're gonna put that right next to the Zuniceratops. Now let's grab our second to last figure. This is a baby Ankylosaurus figure with very similar coloring as the adult figure right over here. It's got the blue and the yellow underbelly. And this figure specifically is actually Ankylosaurus Bumpy. We're gonna put it right there. And for our final figure, this weird looking dinosaur is the Nothosaurus dinosaur. As you can see, its body stays really close to the ground, although it's technically standing on all four legs. It has this really long neck and a long and narrow snout with a bunch of nasty looking teeth. Now let's put that on the very end of the line as our final and smallest dinosaur. First off, we've got the Velociraptor blue figure from the Amber collection. This figure is very movable and very posable. You can see the iconic blue stripe down its side. You can open and close the jaw, move the neck all around. All in all, is a very posable figure. Next up, from the Amber collection is Velociraptor Delta. This figure has some pretty cool detailing and coloring on its body. I love the teal green color and the light underbelly. It's really cool. And is very posable as well. Can move all the limbs in its body, and it is extremely posable. Over here, we've got a Jurassic Park figure. So this figure is really old. This is one of the classic Triceratops figure. You can see that it's got some battle damage, a huge chunk taken out of its side right there. And this Triceratops actually has an action that when you squeeze its stomach, it moves its head up and down. This is another Velociraptor from the Amber collection. This one is Velociraptor Echo. It's got the brown and black coloring along the top with the lighter underbelly, and just like the other figures, is extremely posable. And one thing I haven't pointed out yet is that the tail is actually a bendable rubber. There's like a piece of metal in there, so you can actually bend it and it'll stay in place. That's pretty cool. Here is a Triceratops figure. I think this one might be from Camp Cretaceous, but I can't remember. Let me know in the comments if you know where this Triceratops is from. But it's got the clay red body. It's like a little orangish almost. It's got the brown detailing along the top and the action button on its back for the roaring. Plus, you can move all of its legs too. They can go back and forth a little bit. Here is a bright red and purple Velociraptor figure. This is the classic size for the Velociraptor figures. You can open and close the jaw, you can move the arms and the legs as well, but there's no action button on this one. This Velociraptor is an even brighter red, and it has some bright green striping and detailing along the top. You can actually move the neck back and forth on this figure and up and down. And this figure is actually spring-loaded in the legs so that it can actually leap up into the air if you were to let it go, which is pretty cool. Up next are these two green Velociraptor figures. They look almost identical, but you can tell that the coloring on this one is a little bit darker. See those stripes? They're a little bit darker. But they both have a button on their back to activate the arm action. Here is one of the brightest dinosaurs in this bin. This is a hybrid Triceratops. As you can tell, it is a hybrid with a Stegosaurus. It's got those gold coloring right along the top there. It's got a little bit of battle damage on the side. And when you move the tail, it actually sticks its head forward as if it's stabbing something. Here's another Velociraptor blue figure, but this is in the classic smaller size. Of course, you can see the iconic stripes down the sides of the body, and it is pretty posable. You can move the arms, the legs, and you can open and close the jaw too. Here is another dark gray Velociraptor, but instead of the blue stripe, we've got some yellow detailing along the top, along its tail, and on the top of its head as well. And this figure is fairly movable as well. You can move the arms and the legs, and of course, open and close the jaw. Here's another super old figure. This is a Jurassic Park Triceratops figure. It's got a dark green coloring along the sides with a darker green along the top. And this figure actually has an action button that when you move this leg, it moves its head up and down. I bet you saw this super colossal figure already too. This is the super colossal Velociraptor Blue. Check out that huge blue stripe down its body. It's got some huge claws on its hands. It's got the light underbelly, and of course, like all the super colossal figures, it has the stomach compartment so you can feed it smaller dinosaurs. Up next, this isn't a Triceratops, but I believe it is a Spinosaurus. So pretty closely related. Comes with some sound effects as you can hear. It's got some pretty cool coloring with the gray along its body. It's got some brighter yellow right on the front as well. And you can use the tail to control the head. Before we go any further, I've actually got some brand new figures that we're gonna open up right now. Let's start with this Jurassic World Dominion, Dr. Ian Malcolm, and Velociraptor pack. So here is the Velociraptor from the pack. It's got a dark green color and some pretty cool detailing along the top. It's like brown and then some green detailing speckled in too. That's pretty cool. I don't have another Velociraptor that is colored like this. And here is the Dr. Ian Malcolm figure with an electric staff, as well as some grasshopper figures that I'm sure you recognize from the new Jurassic World Dominion movie. Next, we've got the Triceratops from the Hammond collection. I'm excited to check this one out. This Triceratops is a dark brown color. It has some pretty faint detailing along its body. You can see it's a bit lighter in some areas, but overall it's kind of the same brown color everywhere. It's got a lighter underbelly, but my favorite part is the face and the frill too. That's where the most detail is. Look at these horns. They've looked like they've gone through a lot of wear and tear. I love those orange eyes. So yeah, the face is definitely my favorite part of this figure. And it is fairly movable as well. You can see that you can move the legs back and forth and up and down and all over. And there are 2 joints in the tail as well, which is a pretty cool detail. So all in all, it's okay. I would have liked to have seen better coloring along the body because it's pretty subtle and it kind of just looks like a brown Triceratops all over. But it's pretty different from the other Triceratops I have, so I'm still happy to have this in my collection. Next up, we've got Velociraptor Charlie from the Amber collection. This figure has the bright green coloring with the darker stripes along the top and is just as posable as all the other Velociraptor figures. We've got another hybrid Triceratops figure, and I think we've actually got another one with different coloring. These are both hybrid Triceratops mixed with a Stegosaurus. You can see battle damage on both of them, and on both these figures, when you move the tail, it swings its head forward as if it's stabbing, just like the bright blue one that we saw earlier. Here's another large Triceratops figure. This one actually has 2 action buttons. The first one activates the head to move up and down, and the second button swings the tail. It's got some pretty dark coloring as well. It's a dark green with some dark brown detailing along its top and on the front as well. This Velociraptor is a dark blue color. It's got some darker stripes on the top, and it's actually got an action button, I believe, that activates the arms. There we go. And of course you can open and close the jaw and move the head too. Here is a little Triceratops figure. I think I've actually got 2 of these that are identical. Both of them have the extreme battle damage right there on the side that you can open and close, which is a pretty cool feature. And both of them are this light green color with the brown on the top too. Here's another bright Velociraptor figure. This one is a bright blue with darker striping along the top. This one is actually spring-loaded, so like the other ones that we saw, if you bend the legs and then let it go, it'll actually jump up into the air. Here's a dinosaur species that's a relative to the Triceratops. This is the Zuniceratops. It's got the two horns in the front and a big frill, and then the green body with the darker detailing along the top. Next up, we've got a Velociraptor with a slashing action. This figure is spring-loaded, so you can swing it side to side to swing those arms and claws around. That's a pretty cool feature. Here's another big dinosaur figure. This is also a relative to the Triceratops. This is an Pseudoceratops, and it has two action buttons on its back. The first one activates the head for the roaring, and the second activates the tail. That's pretty cool. Plus it's got some dark green coloring on its legs that fades into the blue, and then the red detailing on the top and on its face too. Looks like we've got two more Velociraptor figures in here. This first one is another super bright Velociraptor with the orange and yellow, and it is also spring-loaded, so this one will jump up into the air as well. And this other Velociraptor is Velociraptor Blue with battle damage on the side that you can open and close. And then finally, I've got these itty-bitty little Triceratops figures from Jurassic World. They all look pretty identical, but with different coloring. This first one is a dark brown color. Also got a gray one with lighter gray on the top. And finally, this bright green one with lighter green on the top. This figure is ginormous. I think it might be one of the largest predator figures that I have in my Jurassic World collection, aside from these super colossal figures. And it's also got these action buttons on its back. One for slashing the claws, and one to activate the jaws. How cool is that? Plus, there's even lights down its throat that you can kind of see on the outside too. Next up, we've got a massive Spinosaurus figure. This figure is the light tan with the dark brown and red along the spine. It is very poseable, and its neck is very movable, which is really cool. Plus, there's a button on the top of its head to activate the jaw. And check out all those teeth, too. Right over here is our first prey of the bin. This is a Triceratops figure with the dark green coloring. It's got some brown detailing along the top and on the front as well. And this figure actually has two action buttons on its back. One is to lift the head up and down for striking with those awesome horns, and the second button swings the tail back and forth. I bet that would hurt if you got hit by this in real life too. Next up, another predator, the mighty Tyrannosaurus Rex with the gray-brown coloring and the dark brown on top. This figure is very poseable as well. It's got a decent amount of detailing in the coloring. I like how they fade from the dark brown to the gray-brown coloring. And of course, it's got the button on the top of its head to activate the jaw. Here is another T-Rex predator. This figure is the Stomp and Escape T-Rex. This one has some very different detailing than the T-Rex that we just saw. It's got these splotches all over its back with the lighter underbelly and the darker coloring right around its eyes too. And this figure has two action buttons. The first one is for the roaring. That's really cool how it lifts its whole neck up. And the second action is actually when you twist the tails, it stomps its feet up and down with sound effects. Here's a small prey from Camp Cretaceous. This is the gray and dark purple Brachiosaurus. It's actually a baby Brachiosaurus, but it's still quite movable and poseable. You can move the neck, the legs, and you can even open and close the jaw too. So even though it's pretty small, it's still a pretty cool figure. On to another predator figure. This figure was made famous by the first Jurassic World movie. This is a Mosasaurus, and this figure is huge. And it's even larger in real life as well compared to the other dinosaurs. It's got this dark blue body with white splotches all over. You can open and close the jaw, you can move all the fins, and you can even swing the tail back and forth too. Right here, we've got, I believe this is the Rowdy Roar's Carnotaurus figure. So it's kind of funny because it looks almost like a baby Carnotaurus. It's got these huge feet and a huge head and then this small body. Plus, it actually comes with a few actions as well. There's a button at the bottom of its tail for the chomping. It's pretty cool. You can see it swings its neck forward. And there's also a button on the top of its head for blinking and more sound effects. Right over here is another Carnotaurus predator figure. This one has the light gray coloring on the underbelly and that same orange-red coloring on its side. and the brown on top. Of course, it's got those iconic horns at the top of its head, those yellow eyes, and it has a few action features as well. You can open and close the mouth using a button on its tail, and you can twist its head in all directions to look really lifelike. Next up, I've actually got some brand new Camp Cretaceous sets that we're gonna open up right now. Let's check out this first one. This is the Ben and Ankylosaurus Bumpy set from the Dino Escape. It looks a little opened up already, but I think it still has most of the pieces. Let's check it out. See the spear over here? And let's go ahead and get Ben out of here and check him out. All right, so the Ben figure actually comes with this awesome little shield and this spear that he can hold. Plus, the figure itself has some pretty cool detailing. The figure looks dirty as if it's been in the jungle and in the wild, so pretty lifelike. And of course, we've got the cute little Ankylosaurus Bumpy with the iconic blue coloring on the top and the yellow underbelly. And even though this figure is pretty small, you can even twist the tail around and adjust that, and move the legs and twist the neck around too. So there's a lot that you can move around on this figure. I've got one more brand new Camp Cretaceous set to open up. This is the Camp Adventure set. All right, this set comes with 4 figurines. The first is this giant Stegosaurus figure, which is a prey dinosaur, and it's got the gray-blue body with the darker coloring right along the top. You can move the neck around a little bit, you can adjust all the legs, and it has an action button that swings its tail back and forth. Next in the set, we've got a Baryonyx figure. That's really cool. I have a few other Baryonyx figures like this. This one has the light green coloring along most of its body, and then it has the dark brown detailing along some of its leg and along the top as well, while its head is a lighter brown color. Plus, there is an action button on its back to activate the jaw. Next in the set, we've got Darius with the iconic yellow sweater and the blue pants. This figure even has the dinosaur tooth necklace around their neck. How cool is that? And last of all, and smallest of all, is another Ankylosaurus Bumpy figure. This figure is super small though, and actually none of the parts move. Oh, you know what? The tail moves back and forth. How cool is that? But that's the only part that moves on this teeny tiny figure. All right, back to the bin. Let's see what other predators and preys we have. We've got another giant T-Rex figure with the light brown coloring on the side and darker brown on the top. You can wiggle the tail around, you can adjust the ankles and move the legs, and of course it's got the button on the top of its head to activate the jaws. I really like with these figures how you can pose their neck in all directions and it actually stays looking in that direction. Right over here, we've got 2 prey figures of the same species. These are both Triceratops. You can tell because they have the 3 horns on the front of their face. This first one is a lot larger and has the clay red coloring and 1 action button on its back to move its head up and down. And the smaller Triceratops figure is a light green in color, and this figure has a really cool feature on the side of its body, which is the battle damage that you can open and close. I really like these because you can choose to hide the battle damage or open it up and show it. We've got more awesome predator figures in here. This is the Albertosaurus with the green body and the orange detailing on the side. And this figure, you can use the tail to twist the head back and forth, as well as open and close the jaw. Here is an Allosaurus figure, and I've actually got a few more Allosaurus figures in here, so let's check these out one at a time. This first one is a dark green color. It's got some red and white detailing right along its neck and its head. It's got those dark red eyes, which I think is really cool. And this figure has the slide lever action to open the jaw and get a bunch of sound effects too. This next Allosaurus figure is gray and light yellow. You can move all the limbs on this one. This one has some yellow eyes, and it has 1 action button on its back to activate the jaws. And here is the final Allosaurus of the bin. This is a brown and dark blue Allosaurus. It looks very much the same as the other figures. It's got the yellow eyes on this figure, as well as the spikes going down its neck, and the slide lever action for different roar sound effects, and a bunch of different poses too. Here's another prey figure. This is a Sauropelta. It has the bright red top and the brown underbelly, and those super huge spikes coming out of its shoulders. It's got a whole row. It's actually got 2 rows on each side. And this figure is actually spring-loaded, so you can swing it back and forth to attack with those spikes. Next up, we've got another Rowdy Roars figure. This is an Indominus Rex. It looks very much the same as the Rowdy Roars Carnotaurus. It's got the big feet, the giant head, and the small body, and it actually has some actions as well. You can use the tail to open the jaw, and then you can press on the tongue to snap it shut. And there is a button on its nose as well to activate more sound effects. I've got some smaller prey in here as well. Check out these Gallimimus figures. They look pretty identical, but this one is a darker orange coloring with brown stripes, and this one is much lighter. And they both have the same movements. You can move all the limbs, you can twist the tail, and you can move the necks up and down as well. Next up, I believe, is the Ceratosaurus figure. This figure is gray, it's got some dark brown, and then the bright red along its back, which is a really cool color scheme, I think. It's got the action button on its back to activate the jaw as well. Here is our first winged predator of the bin. This is a Pteranodon, and this one actually has some battle damage on its wings. You can see that there's a hole in its wing right there. Plus, you can actually open up more battle damage right on its back. Looks like I've got a few more Baryonyx figures in here as well. This first one is another light green with the brown detailing along the top. It's got the action button on its back for chomping, and I've also got this battle damage Baryonyx as well. This one is a darker red color with some blue detailing on the top. It's got a lighter color along the top of its head, and you can see the battle damage on its neck, on its leg, and it looks like that's about it. But it also has an action button to activate the jaw as well. Next up is another prey from Camp Cretaceous. This is the Stegosaurus with the brown, light tan, and green coloring. It's very much similar to the Stegosaurus that we saw earlier, including an action button to swing its tail back and forth, but this one actually has another feature that when you press down here, it moves its neck up and down. The next predator is a Metriacanthosaurus in the bright red coloring with the brown detailing and the light orange along its head and its nose as well. This figure also has the action button on its back to activate the jaw. Right over here, we've got a Pachycephalosaurus figurine. This is light tan along the sides, it's a bit brighter along its belly, and it has the dark gray-blue detailing along its top and on its legs too. Plus, this figure has an action button that when you move the tail, it does the headbutting action. So this figure is actually spring-loaded. All right, check it out. We've got a few raptor figures in here. Velociraptors, to be exact. This first one is the green Velociraptor. It is in a sneaking pose. It's crawling along the ground, looking for some prey. And I've also got this blue Velociraptor with some awesome detailing and even the gold on the top of its head. That's a really cool feature. I think this is my only Velociraptor with reflective gold on its head. Next up, I've got a few Monolophosaurus figures in here, all with different coloring. This first one is super bright green. It's got the darker green along the top and an action button. When you push down on the tail, it opens and closes its jaw. I've also got these other Monolophosaurus. This one is like a light red color with almost purple coloring along its back, and it also has the action button to open and close its jaw. And this Monolophosaurus is dark green with some bright yellow and red coloring along the top, and it also has the action button to open and close its jaw using the tail. Here we've got a few more prey figures from Camp Cretaceous. This first one is a Stygimoloch figure and is really small, but it's still quite poseable. You can move the head in all directions, you can twist the tail and move the limbs. And this figure, I believe, is the Protoceratops. It's got the light purple body with some brighter yellow coloring along the top and on the front as well. And it's got some bright yellow eyes too. Looks like we've got two more winged predators in here. These both, I believe, are Dimorphodons. This first one is a lot brighter. It's got like some fire detailing on the underside of its wings, and the rest of its body is a darker red. And this figure has some purplish coloring along the underside of its wings, while the rest of its body is a gray color. Just a few small figures left. We've got another Gallimimus figure, this one with different coloring. It actually has yellow and brown striping along its back, all the way up to its head. I've also got, I think this is a Troodon figure. It's kind of funny because it looks like it's got a mohawk, but those are actually just the spines going all the way down its back. It's got some cool coloring as well. And then, of course, I've got a Dilophosaurus figure with the light coloring along its body and the red along its frills. Plus, this figure has an action that when you move the tail, its frills activate. And last of all, I've got some of the Camp Cretaceous human character figurines. We've even got Darius again, we've got Brooklyn, and all these figures, each with their own unique looks. To start it off, we're gonna start with this old Jurassic Park T-Rex figure. This T-Rex figure has the real feel skin, so it's actually rubber instead of hard plastic. And when you press on the stomach, it opens and closes its mouth, although it doesn't work too well anymore. It's pretty old. And our first prey is this Dino Tracker's Stegosaurus. This is one of my newest Stegosaurus figures. It has this awesome backpack. There's some pretty cool coloring and detailing all over its body too. For the next mighty T-Rex, we're gonna go with this bright orange one, I believe from Fallen Kingdom. This figure features posable arms and legs, and you can use the tail for a roaring action or for a chomping action. This is one of the few dinosaur figures that has this type of chomping action. For our next prey, we're gonna go with the Amargosaurus figure. This dinosaur stands on all four legs, it has the super long neck, and these two really tall spine or frill things running down its neck all the way to its tail, and has an action button to move its neck and to move its tail too. This T-Rex figure is from the most recent Jurassic World movie, which was Dominion. It has the darker brown body with the black top, it has posable arms and legs, and on this figure you can move the tail side to side to move its torso and to open and close its jaw. Our next predator is actually another carnivore. This is the Baryonyx figure, and this one specifically has the bright orange paint on the top of its head. But let me know in the comments, do you think that T-Rexes hunted Baryonyxes? Back to the T-Rex side, we've got a T-Rex from the original Jurassic World movie. And like many figures from that movie, this figure is actually made by Hasbro, not Mattel, who makes all the new figures today. This figure has some sound effects. You can pose it in a roaring pose, and you can move its tail down for a chomping action. For the next prey, we've got an Iguanodon figure. I believe this one is also from Jurassic World Dominion. It's a medium-sized figure, and it actually has an action. When you press down on its back, it chomps its head. This next T-Rex I got very recently. This is actually a custom painted T-Rex figure. You can see right here that it is also a battle damage T-Rex that you can still turn on and off, which is pretty awesome, and I love this camo coloring. This prey herbivore figure is the Hammond Collection Triceratops. Unlike many of the other Triceratops figures, this one has much more natural coloring. It does have a lighter underbelly, and there's some detailing along its face. I really love the detail on its horns. It makes it look really worn. Up next for the T-Rexes is actually another custom painted T-Rex that I got probably a few weeks ago. This figure is called, I think it's like the Terran T-Rex or something like that, and it has an action button on its back that you can use for the tearing action, and another button on its back to move the tail too. And this custom paint job has a much more realistic look, I think. You can see different shades of brown, and then of course it has the lighter underbelly. But the coolest part, I think, are all the battle damage slashes that the artist added onto this figure. So I think this is a lot more battle damage than this Terran T-Rex originally had. I think this next unusual dinosaur could also have been prey for T-Rex dinosaurs. This is a Sarcosuchus, and I believe there's two different versions of this figure. And this one has the green body with the brown on the top, and of course the super long jaw that you can open and close with a button on its tail. This T-Rex figure is a dark green color, and one of the only few, I think, that is naturally dark green. This was not custom painted. Its arms and legs and tail are posable like many of the other figures, and it has a button on the top of its head for the chomping action. Our next prey is an Ankylosaurus. This figure, I think, is from the Camp Cretaceous series, and it features the clay red underbelly and then the brown armoring on top with the tan spikes. And this figure features an attack action when you press down on its back. Back to the T-Rex side, we've got the Camp Cretaceous Epic Roarin' T-Rex. I think this T-Rex figure might actually be a little bit larger than many of the other T-Rex figures, and it features the movable arms and legs, and by moving the tail, you can move the T-Rex's head and open and close the jaw. Next up for the prey, I've got another Stegosaurus figure. This one is quite a bit older. It features the blue-green coloring on the sides. It's got a lighter yellow underbelly. And like many of the Stegosaurus figures, it has an attack button when you press down on one of its spines. Here's another battle damage T-Rex. This figure, kind of like the custom painted Terran T-Rex, has battle damage painted on its body, some on its neck, a little bit on its chin, and elsewhere on its body too. And other than that, you can move its arms, you can adjust its legs and its tail, and it has the button at the top of the head for roaring. Back to the prey side, we've got, I believe, a Spinosaurus. This figure is in the light blue-gray coloring. It's also got some bright yellow and orange coloring on the front of its face. And by moving the tail, you can move the head, and it has sound effects too. These next two T-Rexes are a bit smaller in size than many of the other ones. This first one here is the Sound Surge T-Rex that came out for Jurassic World Dominion, and it's pretty small and it's a hard plastic compared to this Jurassic Park. I believe it's a juvenile T-Rex, and this figure has the real feel skin, so almost its whole body is this soft rubber. And this figure has some epic battle damage on its side, but no sound effects. However, the Sound Surge obviously does have sound effects. For our next prey figure, we're gonna go with one that might be a little controversial. It is a Velociraptor. Do you think that T-Rexes hunted Velociraptors? This figure is the basic Velociraptor, so you can pose its tail, its legs, and its arms, but it doesn't come with any sound effects or attack buttons. Next up for the T-Rexes is a figure that is very special to me. This is a Stomp and Escape T-Rex that I custom painted myself. And let's actually compare this painting with the original version. So here is the original paint job. You can see that it's mostly brown and it has some gray detailing along the top of its body. And compare that with what I did. So it still has a lot of brown on the top, but it's got this really nice green color running all the way up to its face. And then of course the bright yellow underbelly. I think it's pretty cool, and it is one of the figures I am the most proud of. The next prey figure is another scary looking carnivore, but it still might have been hunted by the T-Rex. This is the Suchomimus figure, and I think there are two different versions of this figure. This one is in the blue with the yellow detailing running down its spine, and it has one action button for the chomping action. Next, let's go ahead and open up this brand new one that I bought for this video. This is the Jurassic World Legacy Collection Extreme Chompin' T-Rex. All right, here it is. It's another bright orange T-Rex with the darker brown on top and the light underbelly. It has the posable arms, it's got the posable legs, and the tail as well. And you can actually move the neck and head around quite a lot too. But don't forget, it also has the chomping button on the top of its head. Our next prey is another Triceratops figure. I believe that this one is from Jurassic World Dominion, and it has some unusual colors on it. There's this soft green color in the back, and then it has this more swampy green color running up all the way to its face, and it has the orange on the top of its frill too. And this figure features an attack button when you press down on its body. This next T-Rex is an extreme battle damage T-Rex. It has the light underbelly with brown on the sides and then the gray detailing on the top. And I think this T-Rex might have been what this originally looked like. So check out those differences in the coloring now. They look totally different. For our next prey, we've got another Iguanodon figure, but this one actually came out quite recently. I believe it was released as a pack with a Scorpiovenator figure. And this Iguanodon has the light tan on the sides with the darker brown on top, and it has an attack button when you press down on its back. Our next T-Rex is the mighty bull T-Rex from Jurassic Park. You can see the leg tattoo right there. And like many of the older figures, this has the real feel skin, so it's a soft rubber over most of its body. And something that's pretty unique for the older Jurassic Park figures, this T-Rex can actually swallow smaller dinosaurs. And you can see the stomach compartment right there. This prey figure is the Herrerasaurus, and I believe this dinosaur is also a carnivore, but I think it was plenty small enough to be hunted by T-Rexes. And this Herrerasaurus figure features the battle damage on the side that you can open and close. Next, let's grab this huge super colossal T-Rex that's been hanging out in the back. This figure is also a custom colored T-Rex, and it is now in the dark green coloring with the black striping along the top. This figure might be one of my oldest super colossal figures. It definitely has a lot of wear and tear to it. Next up for the prey, I've got a small Parasaurolophus figure. Now it doesn't have any action buttons, but you can still pose its arms, its legs, its tail, and of course its head. And here's another classic T-Rex figure with a light brown and dark brown along the top, and a fully posable body, and the jaw chomping action. For our final prey and dinosaur of this collection is a baby Brachiosaurus figure. This one comes in a few different versions, and this is the light green on the sides and the dark green along the top.
Want to see more dino videos? Click the subscribe button now.